The wayfinding landscape is changing, so welcome to Endpoint's Wayfinding Xchange Podcast. We want to connect with leading experts, tech innovators, and key contributors to exchange knowledge and innovation in physical and digital wayfinding. We want to shape the future of wayfinding through discussion, collaboration, and shared expertise. And this is why we have created this podcast series. Enjoy the episode.
So welcome back to the Wayfinding Xchange Podcast. I'm your host, Gideon Wilkinson, and today we're exploring a fascinating topic: how branding shapes and defines the spaces we inhabit. From hotels to campuses to cityscapes, branding in the built environment is about creating identity, evoking emotions, and delivering a seamless user experience. We'll also be looking at why it's so important to understand a brand's essence and who it's for before jumping into the physical design or architecture. How can understanding these elements influence the spaces we create, and how do collaboration and partnerships bring these visions to life? To help us unpack all this, I'm excited to welcome San Chan, Managing Director of Latitude. I've known San for many, many years, so this hopefully will be quite fun conversation. But Latitude, briefly, is an international creative agency with offices in London, Dubai, Singapore and New York, working with clients in hospitality, luxury, real estate and retail. And they have a breadth of expertise in crafting transformative branding strategies. And San belies her looks, has been doing this for many, many years and has a wealth of knowledge about connecting brands and spaces. So, welcome to the podcast, San.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Chuffed to be here.
It's our pleasure, and it's great to see you again. So, we always start by asking a few questions about yourself and how you got into branding. What's your journey been, and where has it gone for those many, many years?
You're saying I look young for my years.
Oh, you're amazing. So tell us about your story.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose I like that question. How do you become a branding expert? Where did your journey begin? Well, I'll talk about my influence of brand on me as a person, and I can kind of go back to me as a blended person, for want of a better description, because I'm born in London, educated here. But as you may not be able to see, because this is a podcast, I'm actually Hong Kong heritage, so Chinese heritage. And so I suppose I've always been curious about my own sense of self, you know, and identity, you know, how I fit in, you know, how I'm different, maybe, good and bad, you know, in many ways. And then I suppose on a more superficial level, kind of as a teenager, and maybe part of the Asian thing, it's just brands as labels. You know, I wasn't afraid to sort of have the big Naf sweatshirt, you know, or the Calvin Klein perfume. You know, so for me, brands were very much about, recognition and being attracted to something. Professionally, I guess I was really most inspired by my time. Fell into the design world and took a job at a design agency. Answered an ad at the back of the Design Week. Do you remember that?
The classic, yeah.
Classic. There was a posting for an agency, and it was for creating names and identities for music bands, actually. My claim to fame was the album cover for Westlife, if you can believe that.
Really are showing your age now.
Yeah. And the packaging for things like for Sony Computer Entertainment, for example. So packaging for Gran Turismo and things like that. And so I kind of fell into this design world and then moved from there to my most formative years, which was at Lambinan. And I know you'll probably remember Martin. We just were talking about him recently. And Martin was a real character, you know, and I think he bred a group of us that really kind of came to understand branding in its most simplistic form, which was just, you know, creating and generating a really true sense of, oneself. The journey kind of took me from all the corporate brands, from most famously with Lambinan BBC. We created O2, from Lloyds Bank, FIFA, Diana Memorial Fund. It was every sector that you could imagine. List is too long, really. But that's how I kind of came to understand what brand was and I guess the value of brand. And then, of course, I think we crossed paths at CDT.
Yeah.
Carol Dempsey Thurkel and Mike Dempsey, the full name. And Mike Dempsey was kind of from that school of thought, kind of cutting through what brand really meant and what that stood for, creating a persona.
Yeah. So were you educated in design?
No.
You're not a designer?
I'm not a designer. Can't draw for toffee. I had studied languages.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually studied French and Spanish, and I think actually the world that I now occupy in terms of branding for hospitality, you mentioned lifestyle, is kind of born out of more my own interest, my own personal interest for culture, travel, fashion, art, food. We share that interest, I'm sure. And that's kind of why I think I'm in that sort of sweet spot at the moment of taking all of that experience, perhaps from the wider branding world, and then trying to apply that in a more specific territory in my professional life. Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. Because, I mean, obviously I've only known you as a serious client service person and now, MD. But I'd still kind of class you as, one of the most knowledgeable and kind of creative people I know, which obviously is inherent from your youth, as you just said, but also, you have done the who's who of branding agencies. You've had a good journey through that world and met many characters and done tons of work on the way.
Yeah. I've navigated my way quite deliberately, I think, in terms of the people that I've worked with, the kind of, again, personalities perhaps that have inspired, and that goes from branding through to advertising, startups to the more established agencies. And I've learned so much along the way, 30 years, I think it is. I've been in the industry.
30 years.
Everyone looks a bit shocked because I look 16.
Bringing it back to the theme of the podcast, big question. Why does branding matter in today's built environment? I think we all know, brands from, consumer products these days, tech products. Where did it start with place and built environment for you? And why does it matter? Buildings are buildings.
Ooh.
Controversial.
God, you had to throw that in there. Well, listen, for me, the built environment is simply a physical manifestation of a brand. Brand is intangible.
Mm-hmm.
To use that, as a comparison, brands are intangible. The built thing, the architecture, let's just say a building, is tangible, is physical, as you said. But they are intrinsically linked. The materials that you may use, the space that you create is all there, like you're in your intro, to create a feeling, to create an environment, a setting for something to play out. So I suppose for me, it's no different to advertising and marketing, or sonic branding, to any expression of something. Brand is the thing, I suppose, that is the foundation on which to build all of those expressions.
Okay.
Did that answer your big question?
I guess sort of. The interesting thing, obviously, in our world of wayfinding, it often feels like a real intersection between kind of this mysterious thing called brand, which again, everyone, a lot of people just associate with, a look or a logo or, a kind of visual identity. But often when you dig deeper with some of our clients, obviously there's a lot more to brand, tone of voice, expression, like you said, some brands even through to how the doors sound when, a car door opening and the thud and the resonance of the the exhaust, it can be all encompassing. And we're often given guidelines to follow, and certainly from a typographical point of view, often colours to interpret and bring into our work. But then we also work with architects at the other end of the scale, and I'm just interested in what you think the architectural world thinks of branding.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny because if you listen to how you were talking about it, I suppose, you cite the things like the visual identity and the logo and the typeface and what have you. And to me, those are just tools.
Mm-hmm.
Brand is really about the soul of something, getting deep now.
Mm-hmm.
It's, it's that emotional connector that can resonate with someone. And the rebrands that you talk about are often just sort of like clothes, wardrobe swap outs, or refreshes. They're not about changing fundamentally what that business or place or whatever the product is meant to be about. So if you're clear about who you are and what you do, then surely the expression, as we said, kind of takes that on board. The relationship with architects, though, to your question, I think is really born out of a sort of hangover of disciplines being siloed.
Mm-hmm.
Architects, interior designers, advertising, as I said, whatever that discipline is, they're all briefed separately. Often, let's just say developers, because this is real estate and building, if we talk about that in particular. Because, again, their building is tangible, they've got something to respond to and decide whether they like or don't like it. But if you do probe an architect, they're trying to do the same thing, which is find a narrative, that word that everybody's using, find a nugget of something that means something that can connect with someone again, and then bring that to life. And I suppose if we were doing this in the proper order of things, and this is when the architects arm wrestle us.
Yeah.
On paper, branding is the thing that comes before all of it, because you're establishing, as I said, those building blocks. We often sort of talk about branding as people, to sort of debunk and demystify what a brand is. Well, certainly this is my interpretation of what a brand is. And if you're creating a being, with a belief system and you said tone of voice and personality, then the architecture or whatever manifestation that is, whether it's physical, digital, whatever it is, then it has to embody that spirit and that soul. So ask an architect what they think of branding, or ask another branding agency what they think branding is.
No, I think it's a properly interesting conversation. I know in our worlds of wayfinding, because you could say that signage, environmental graphics, etc., is it's kind of, you could argue it's a brand application or brand assets, but to your point of brands being much deeper about that, deeper than look. I think I agree with what you said. I think architects, right at the very start of their creative process, are ultimately thinking about how people will feel. And I think that's kind of what you're saying as well. It's, brands are about emotion and
absolutely
trust and all that other good stuff.
If you're clear about who you are, then the person that you're interacting with or the space that you're interacting with has a clarity about it, and there is a sort of trend, go back to the architect question, of I think people having a bit of a light bulb moment that actually, if everybody sort of started from the same point and almost kind of co-created that original in essence or intent of what a brand's going to be, then actually it becomes a sort of unifying force for absolutely everything.
Tell us about some of it, because I know, obviously, we've worked together on hospitality projects, hotels, and that seems to me to be a real sector where brand has a massive influence, and especially on interior design, and also, guest experience. And I love this idea of we talk about wayfinding, a bit like brand. It's not just about navigation. It's ultimately about how people experience a place, a building. So, give some examples, if you have, of how brand manifests itself especially in the hotel world.
Well, I think let's talk about one of the projects that we did together then, Andaz in Bali.
Oh, great site visits.
That was a great trip, wasn't it? And it's funny, isn't it? Because the Andaz brand is an Andaz brand. They have got their guidelines and what have you. And actually, some of the signage was take the guidelines and do it.
I don't know why these hotel brands have signage guidelines, really. I really don't. Because a lot of the briefs now are so localised.
Yeah.
It's an Andaz, in this case, was in Bali.
Yeah.
So it's not, I think, historically, a lot of these brands were like copy and paste.
Yeah, cookie cutter.
Yeah, it's just like, well, Andaz there and there has got to be exactly the same. It's got to feel the same. People need to know what they're ordering. But now it's much more nuanced and localised.
To use their line, a sense of place. And you'll recall, I guess, from our own discovery trip, as you said, we went and did a site visit, very fortunate to go and do that. And this particular location was in what I would describe as Sanur, actually, in Bali. And it was a sort of sleepy village, wasn't it? I think some would criticise it for being a bit boring. That was idyllic for me.
Didn't get the boring notice from me. I thought it was pretty good.
No, it was
utterly... But it had a really interesting history, didn't it?
History and utterly charming. There was, again, to sort of, without being woo-woo about it, there was a certain energy about it, which I think we were keen, from a branding perspective, to kind of encapsulate. And effectively, we'd inherited the master plan and we'd inherited the building, and they were going to have those Balinese rooftops and all the rest of it. You'll remember. Alang. And but I guess in that instance, our job was to find the nugget within the story, to sort of hang our hat on. And that was, in this case, about being a village within a village. The whole orientation of the villas, having that village square, if you remember, with the sort of F&B all around it, even to the point of rooms kind of overlooking that, kind of took us back to a bit of a nostalgic time of, village life and the hustle and bustle and the interaction again of village people, buying their wares or whatever it might be. And so I suppose we really wanted to capture that. And so the collateral, which I suppose we came to design, which is branded communication, had that grainy, nostalgic feel about it. And all the communications had that slightly sort of rustic, again, intangible ways, that even the selection of the paper stock, for the materials was deliberate. It was purposeful with that story in mind. And then pulling that through to, how that influenced the signage. I remember, your beautiful finger posts and things like that almost kind of were reminiscent of just wandering around a village in the old times. That great black and white. Local materials. Balinese teak wood and all that stuff. And really going that extra mile to even source that. But obviously from an elevated perspective, it's a point of inspiration. It's not there to be a theme park.
That's where you got to be really careful that it doesn't become
a pastiche,
inauthentic almost. But I think we got it right there. And I think let's not beat around the bush here. Those projects are quite difficult, probably not from necessarily a design perspective. There's loads of stuff you can hang your hat on. It's actually, I've said for many, many years, hotel projects, they're a lot less about strategy and much more about getting the aesthetics right. Although that project, I forget how many rooms, there's probably 150 rooms or something, and the way the blocks, there was very beautifully designed individual villas, but there were some 2-story, 3-story blocks. And the numbering for the rooms had kind of, I think we'd originally inherited from the original architectural drawings. And yeah, it actually the numbering became very sticky. And I remember I learned a lot about how telephone systems at hotels seem to work. And a lot of the numbering is driven by the hotel's telephone system. But that's a different story. But yeah, aesthetically, I mean, I just remember, exploring a little bit wider Bali with you and your graphics guy, and just that, they're trying to create this authentic, or this idea of village life as a resort. And so we went out and looked at villages, and you see those patterns, you see all those cultural influences, and I think you guys brought that to life really beautifully, way beyond, I think, even what an interior designer would do. They were obviously doing their bit in terms of rooms, and again, we didn't really work with those guys, did we?
Not extensively.
It was quite siloed.
At the beginning, there was some overlap, because we wanted to learn and get up to speed with what was already on the table, effectively. But but going back to that village, I can't remember the line itself, but that kind of essence of village life, that influenced not just the signage and the collateral, but even the naming of the restaurants, for example. They were quite playful and they were quite simple and honest. Like, I think one was called Wok Wok, for example, and it was just really simple and not overcomplicated and actually quite cool. There was one that was just called, Fisherman's Bar or something like that. It was as if it would been a local person setting up their stall and going out and fishing. So trying to sort of imbue every touch point, harking back to that. I don't want to use that concept, the big word concept, but harking back to that story and that original feeling is what branding is.
Yeah, and I think our guys found it really interesting because, again, I think sometimes we, as the wayfinding people, almost become a bit obsessed with navigation, legibility, accessibility. I mean, they're all important things, and it wasn't a very accessible site. But I think in that sector, you have more slack to
be creative,
because at the end of the day, you're almost in a walled environment, and actually, discovering the site and kind of getting lost is not that. You're never lost, you just don't quite know where you are.
You're kind of wandering.
Exactly. You're perfectly safe. You're not going to suddenly wander off into the wilderness.
Yeah.
A wall is going to bounce you back, or a path is going to bounce you back to the centre. So we did all sorts of things with the typography. You had about 3 or 4 different typefaces, and it's like how you curated them for different areas and different messages. Again, all coming from what we discovered on our trips. It's like there is no set type.
There is no system because it's a village.
Done, really.
Yeah. I thank you for reminding me about the typefaces, because you're right. It wasn't. It would have been so tempting to be rigid. Exactly. But if you really want to lean into that village thing, then it's almost found, isn't it? It's that kind of sense of, okay, well, that's what that person would have done as he set up his stall, and that's what that person would have done if they set up that stall. And also, the way that we did the signs, just sort of, this is your terminology then, but the ones on the restaurants, which were almost just hanging signs and, simple. I was going to say cheap and cheerful, but I didn't mean literally cheap and cheerful. But again, kind of symbolising that village life.
It's lovely to go down memory lane. It was a really great project, but there were some difficulties there. It kind of brings us on to this idea of, collaboration. And for us and our team on that project, it was, it's really like we said, from typographical, from the way you do your research, from the way you think and look at the world, it was quite inspirational for our guys to be part of that and a part of that collaboration. I remember walking around the site with the architect, who was, a pretty amazing guy, and he wasn't overly precious, but he really cared about the site and was obviously hugely experienced in hospitality and did some amazing things. But where some of the difficulty with that particular project, and maybe it's reminiscent of hospitality in our experience, you've often got a developer, you've got financiers, you've got an operator. Then at some stage in the project, they'll employ a general manager who's really key to those types of projects. It can become very difficult to be truly collaborative because it's like a three-legged stool. There's lots of masters,
lots of voices,
and lots of voices. So I mean, but often it's that collaboration and partnership that ends up creating a really wonderful place, really wonderful experience. Have you got any thoughts on that, as particularly that project, or generally?
Probably more a general point. I think, for us and me, collaboration is critical. Everybody has a valid opinion. And actually what it does is almost help you look at a problem from different angles. You're kind of able to interrogate something through different lenses with the purpose of, I guess, kicking the tires on something and making sure it's as robust as possible. As you say, this brand, to use that term, influences everything from, again, the service philosophy, the way the staff interact with each other, as well as with the guests, the way that they recruit even. Architecture and interior design is just another stream, of that. And that's why branding is kind of all-encompassing, in many ways. But collaboration is key, and I'm pleased to say we've collaborated, with partners as yourself over the years. It's we do what we do, you do what you do.
Yeah.
But goodness, when you put those minds together in the same room, we're all asking quite similar questions. I remember actually listening to. I did listen to one of your podcasts, I promise.
Someone did.
I think it was someone from HOK.
Oh, yeah. Ocean.
Yeah, she was great.
Yeah.
And actually, I remember her describing her or their methodology, and it was literally getting everybody in a room for 2 hours, half a day, what it might be. It was very much a mirror of our approach.
Yeah,
asking very similar questions, understanding the different perspectives, the different stakeholder opinions, allowing them to voice that and listen.
Yeah.
And I think part of the problem solving for creating a brand is to listen, because actually you're kind of creating their baby. Kind of, sort of that fusion of genetics is kind of happening in that room.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense, before you can actually, it's a silly analogy really, but give birth to the brand baby. But in that sense, just sort of to finish the thought, we've all got a responsibility. We've all got a vested interest in how that thing plays out, and therefore to, and that goes back to your architect question. If there was a way in which we could, put those heads together, then it's a stronger result.
Trends.
Oh.
We're on trends already. You've got a place out in Dubai, a studio out in Dubai. We've been out there for many years. There's lots going on, especially in hospitality and residential. And kind of one of the manifestations I've noticed over there, it seems more over there than over here at the moment, is these idea of actual branded residencies where they're taking Mercedes or some of the big fashion brands and designing, Armani apartments and using that name. So big thing for the brand. So I guess classically that would be called a brand extension. Not sure how they work financially and whether the brand has much influence in the design of the interior. I'm sure they do. But yeah, what's your thought on that? I mean, it seems to be exclusively at the moment in residential and high-end residential. Obviously, residential developments in Dubai are very competitive. Yeah, there's lots being built, and I guess brand is being used for what brand has historically done.
Yeah, to cut through and sort of put a recognizable and familiar face to something that I want to walk in that direction towards, Mercedes versus, the apartment next door. Yeah. And it could be literally next door, right? These developments the cranes everywhere in Dubai when you go there. And it's that decision making. Okay, well, it's the same as, whether it's branded residences or any product.
Exactly.
Why have I bought an app? Why did I buy an Apple phone versus a Samsung phone? Or why did I buy am I allowed to mention brands?
I don't know. We'll have to get our legal team involved.
Okay. I'm just using it as an example, but it's why do I buy a plain baseball cap that's just black, versus one with a very famous swoosh on it?
Why indeed? But yeah, I think that's what those developers must be, they're almost, it's kind of like really amping up their marketing and point of difference. It's like, this is essentially an apartment block next to another apartment block. This is the Mercedes Tower and this is the Jacob & Co Tower. Yeah. They all are borrowing from what those brands mean to people and culture. And I mean, I don't want to be really commercial about it. It's just like, we can say it's a Mercedes one. It'd be more expensive than the one next door by the developer who's made branded up a brand for his apartment block, which is still the normal way of doing it, I just wondered if you'd, seen this phenomenon growing. You got any opinions about it? Have you worked on any of those yet?
We are working on a few, and actually it's interesting because in that sense you want to ensure that brand is not just the badge on the door, and then actually if I'm marketing that apartment or whatever it is, that actually from the experience of buying it, or inquiring about it, let's go back a step, inquiring about it through to buying it, even in terms of the fit out, that therefore that brand should be present in some capacity. And that, it could be, it's a fashion designer, so I'm expecting some of their, bespoke fashion designed items, or styling or whatever it might be. And that can go down to even things like the amenities, that are in there, or access to certain things. It might be that I have say it is an Armani thing, then does that give me, by living there, exclusive access to personal shopping or, some other brand affiliation somehow? Even cafes is a big thing, isn't it? Branded cafes that you go to. I mean, there's an Anya Hindmarsh cafe, but she's kind of created her own little village here in London, for example, as a comparison. But you could have the Armani cafe. I'm gonna, and I don't live in the building. I'm just gonna go over there for the cafe versus the Shake Shack next door.
It feels to me, I have to say, they feel quite odd extensions. And we've worked in hotels. And we've talked about brands in hotels, but, the way that permeates, like you've said, really eloquently, is not just appearance and touch and feel. It's also deep experience, the service offer, the recruiting, the way you're treated as a guest. In terms of, I mean, maybe they're not selling a service. They are just apartments they're selling. It's not, they're not
I don't,
serviced apartments.
I don't know what they're offering in particular, but one would imagine, or one would hope, that if it's a Mercedes apartment, that again, something in the mix of the experience speaks to the value, the
really
values.
Grumpy sales guy not allowing you to drive one of the cars. Yeah.
I haven't had that experience, but but speaks to that philosophy of what Mercedes stands for, and I think your decision making of going to that one rather than that one is such a personal one, because again, it's about that, for fear of repeating myself, kind of that connection. You gravitate towards one thing, and I might gravitate towards something. And I don't find it as weird, maybe, as you do. I think we're living in a world where brands are just kind of omnipresent in everything, and especially in a noisy market like Dubai, you've got to be all the more clear about who you are and what you do. I don't think I'd stay at the Mercedes one myself, but that's just me. But my partner,
well, let's face it.
He'll be getting the brochure.
None of us are really in their target market demographic, are
That's
they?
true. Know your audience.
It's a decision. Decisions we'll probably never be making.
Yeah.
Are there other trends that you're noticing? Certainly in this. I think this idea of place branding.
Yeah. Mixed use developments is just on overdrive, isn't it? You don't go to a place for one thing anymore. You go to a place for multiple things, and that could be to live, to eat, to play, to be entertained, for health, even. There's some integrated developments where it's just all in one place. But even then, and sort of the phrase of, mixed use or mixed up, you've got to have an even stronger point of difference of what knits those bits of the jigsaw puzzle together. To keep those people coming back.
So you're seeing there's potentially more investment from developers in brand around mixed-use developments.
Absolutely.
Because they're selling more than kind of one thing.
It's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's a lifestyle, and actually those decisions again on, okay, let's throw out a theoretical situation, and you've got a hotel plus a residences, plus a retail brand, plus a hospital. Yeah. In that kind of like pocket of community, then what are those brands going to be? Are they going to be your own brands? Gosh, that's a lot of investment to come up with something completely new. You've got to work that much harder, don't you, to establish it? Well, that's okay, because if my philosophy as a developer or this destination is about this, then that hotel brand should be that. And that residence brand should be that, because there's a shared common vision and there's a shared audience, there's a shared mindset. And again, that sort of commonality, I think, is compelling. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, I remember some years ago, it was I think it was Wolf Olin's, and they were talking about, I can't remember what, it was a city. And they're talking about brands in terms of city brands. And I remember thinking at the time, it's like, wow, this, back to your point about, brand in a way should be leading much of, it can be a catalyst to change lots of things, or be a focal point for a lot of change. And I can't remember what city it was, but there was a big thing about it. And then you started seeing lots of city branding projects, country branding projects, the world brand. No, that hasn't happened.
We might need one.
I mean, have you ever worked on a project like that? I mean, I wouldn't, it must be a fascinating journey trying to
I've
articulate
admired
the essence of a country.
Yeah. Sadly, no would be the answer to that. We've flirted, funny enough, with a project in the Far East. I can't probably talk about it too much, but gosh, the research on that was amazing. Yeah, it was a real pinch me moment in terms of imagine if, but capturing the essence of a country. But, I think we were talking Or I was talking recently about airports, for example.
Yeah.
And getting out of a plane, and how that airport was almost the, what did we call it? The gateway into the country. It's
like the front door.
The front door into a country. And I did a stopover recently in Helsinki, in Finland, and gosh, it couldn't be more Finnish.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the most amazing way. It was just the vibe, if I can use that word, the environment, the materiality, the way the lighting was, and maybe I'm more attuned to it because we are in the business of exploring that. But even then, I think, if you asked somebody that wasn't tuned into that they go, oh, wow, this feels Finnish. This feels like...
I had a similar experience in Iceland, in Reykjavik. I remember the airport there, and it felt very much of its place. The materials they use, they're using a different colour for. I think I don't know. Get onto airports, but I think there's definitely. I think airports are often built because of efficiency and movement of people quickly. Yeah. So they're like machines, and the wayfinding is very practical and legible and efficient, and it's all about that efficiency. And I think there's definitely an opportunity. It's probably happening. I've not been to every modern airport in the world.
That'd be great for you.
I think those big international airports should be a bit like the hotels. They should be of the place. It should be localised. Like you say, for many, it's the front door. It's their first experience of a country, landing there. And it feels like not necessarily the brand of the airport or the brand of the airport operator, who are just generic unknowns, but actually building some essence of place. Because a lot of airports are very generic. Yeah. Could be anywhere.
Yeah. What a great brief that would be, though.
Anyone out there?
Yeah. You know my number.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, countries. I mean, in the Middle East, there's a lot of new cities being master planned and thought about. And I know that does seem to me, from our experience, there seems to be a lot thought. I think brand turns up a little bit sooner in the journey than typical. Yeah. And again, I'm guessing that's because they want to attract investment, they want to attract developers, they want to tell a story about their particular city and how it's much better to build here and invest here than it is in that other city down the road.
And you're selling a vision, aren't you?
Yes.
Because there's nothing there.
Literally.
So you have nothing but a story to tell.
Yeah.
And I think, again, that comes full circle back to the sense of self and identification and being true to who you are. It's funny, isn't it? Because in those workshops and those Q&As that I mentioned at the beginning of any project, there's a big thing that we always encourage, which is just about being true to yourself. Don't try and be something that you're not, or try to copy somebody else. If sustainability is not at the top of the list, it's not at the top of the list. It's fine. If your hotel's far to travel to, you can't change that. That's not a disadvantage. Let's make that an advantage. Because you want an audience that wants to be remote.
Yeah.
Actually, and wants to escape. The hubbub of urban life or whatever. I think I'm tuned into that maybe because of
lean into the difficulties.
Lean into those challenges, as it were. Embrace them. Put them in.
True marketing. I like it.
Listen to me. I'm on a roll here. But build that into your problem solving.
Yeah.
In many ways, because you can't be anything other than yourself. I'm going to use the word authentic. There's that word.
It's very popular.
Everybody's using that word. But, there's actually no other way of saying authentic in the true meaning than authentic, genuine, I suppose.
Yeah.
But when it's come from nothing, then, you've got to be super clear about all of that up front.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay. I mean, look, it's been great. In terms of just wrapping up, give you an opportunity. What sort of advice would you give to listeners, whether architects, developers, other designers or design disciplines? Just that importance of understanding brand possibly before the physical work begins. I think that's probably your message, isn't it?
That probably is the message, is think about it, as not just the thing that you've been engaged to do, but just take a step back and think about, the beginnings of what this thing is going to be and how that can impact everything, absolutely everything. And I suppose the other thing is sort of that my Martinism, from what I learnt at Lambinet, is just to keep it simple, because everything else is so complicated. It's so multi-layered that whatever you come up with has just got to be, simple, digestible, and have some depth.
Please bring some simplicity back.
Well, we all need some simplicity in our lives.
Absolutely. And on that wonderfully simple note, let's call it a wrap. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been great to see you again.
Always a pleasure, never a chore.
And hopefully we will be sipping tequilas on a Bali beach for our next project.
Would love to. You're a good travel companion.
Thank you very much. So are you.
Till next time.
Maybe Hong Kong.
Maybe.
Thanks, Anne.
Thank you for listening to our latest Wayfinding Xchange podcast. Stay tuned for further episodes and feel free to contact us with any questions and suggestions for future episodes.